Thank you for watching us on YouTube. But did you know that if you're on the go, you can get the full show as a podcast now? You can get our morning breakdown of the most important topics facing our country, news not being covered by the mainstream media, interviews with change-making progressives, and info on what you can actually do about all this. Search for The Damage Report on your favorite podcast app and subscribe so you know when new episodes are ready to go. Nikki Haley is apparently out. Everybody was shocked to find that out, except Nikki Haley, 2 to 3 people that she apparently confided with, and if you believe him, Donald Trump. So she is going to leave by the end of the year. Within 2 to 3 weeks, we should have an idea of who her successor will be, and then we can start to evaluate what a potential change in course for our relationship with the UN and our allies we might get from that. But I want to talk a little bit about the announcement process. Donald Trump was speaking about her and what she's accomplished in the role, and he had this to say: she's done a fantastic job, and we've done a fantastic job together. It's always got to be about him at the end of the day. We've solved a lot of problems, and we're in the process of solving a lot of problems. So I love that quote, because he's talking about a woman that he's worked with now for 1.5 years. She has outlasted most of the other people in his administration, especially in the area of foreign policy, but you could just honestly say anyone in his administration. And that quote he just delivered, I'm not entirely sure he knows who she is, because that could be applied to literally anyone in his cabinet. But he goes on to say, she told me probably 6 months ago, maybe at the end of the year, at the end of the 2-year period, but by the end of the year, I want to take a little time off, I want to take a break. Do we think that actually happened? Do we think that that's honest, that she told him 6 months ago? He's gonna say it either way. At the end of the day, does it really matter? Perhaps not. But if he was blindsided, if it turns out that she told him yesterday or a week ago, would he actually admit to that? I know it's a small thing to focus on, but I'm so used to being lied to by people in power that I have to question even things like that. But she says why she's leaving. There's no personal reason. It's very important for government officials to understand when it's time to step aside. I agree with that. I don't trust any career politician when they say that that's what they're doing, but I think that that's what they should do. What's interesting is that in announcing that she was gonna be leaving, Donald Trump said at one point, I wish that we had the video, but he said at one point that she's moving out, but I hope that she comes back, perhaps in some other role. She can take her pick, and she apparently laughed when he said that. Look, maybe she'll come back, it is possible that she'll run for something, and we'll be breaking down some of those possibilities in just a minute. But returning in some capacity to his cabinet, it's certainly not impossible if she wants to maintain a high profile in the Republican Party at this point. But look, I want to talk both about this breaking news and how people have responded. I also want to break down what effect she's actually had in the UN. So substantively, not just politically, what role has she played? I will start off by saying that when this news broke, everyone freaked out on Twitter, and my immediate reaction, I'm gonna be completely honest with you, is I don't really care. Or at least I'm struggling to understand why I should care, why you watching this, how your life will actually be changed by having someone other than Nikki Haley at the UN. Not in general terms, not historically. It's a very important role. Our relationship with the UN is extremely significant for American people and for people in countries across the world. But under Donald Trump, it is certainly a less influential position. Not just because the Republicans historically have been incredibly hostile to the very idea of the UN, to funding it, to participating in its missions, and we'll get to some of the ways that has been dialed back under Nikki Haley. But in particular with Donald Trump, does he care at all about our traditional allies? Will he actually advance sort of the mission statement of the UN, what it is supposed to accomplish? Will he ever allow our country to participate in that, whether it's Nikki Haley or it's someone else, if it's John Bolton someday, which I don't actually expect to happen, but how important is it? Now, it's not to say that she hasn't accomplished anything. We can talk about some of what she did. She is given credit for championing human rights. So she has, at times, spoken out for communities that are being victimized by their governments. That is a good thing. That's the thing that makes her supposedly a moderate Republican, is that she at least seems to care about what is happening to people in other parts of the world. Unfortunately for her, as she's been doing that for 1.5 years, she has been undercut every step of the way by Donald Trump, as I'm sure she knew she would when she transitioned from a person that spent the primary attacking him, if not by name, but by reputation, saying that the misogyny, the racism, the xenophobia was bad for the Republican Party. And then she had to go and make the case for him as he continued to do that. So when she goes to the UN and she says, such and such a community, the dictatorship is treating it badly, there's great poverty, there's a lack of rights, whatever it is, and then he comes out and speaks favorably about every dictator across the face of the earth, that certainly makes it harder for her to do her job. When you have that huge philosophical and indeed policy-specific chasm between the UN ambassador and Donald Trump. What else has she done? Well, this is one of the big things that she deferred from Trump on. She did criticize Russia's support for the dictator of Syria, Bashar al-Assad. She was much more critical of Russia in general on a number of different issues, but this is one of the ones that in terms of policy mattered the most. She did not feel like it was in the interests of the Syrian people for Bashar al-Assad to be propped up in the way he was by the Russian government. Donald Trump would occasionally feign concern over those sorts of things, but he doesn't speak about it with the sort of passion or concern that Nikki Haley would. And then when it came to things like sanctions and things like that, she was more likely to talk about that in an open way, amongst our international peers than Donald Trump would. And almost certainly then whoever ends up replacing her will. On the other hand, though, she did constantly support Trump's anti-Iran stance. She once gave a speech in front of a supposed Iranian missile as evidence that they are providing missile technology to terrorist groups and things like that. She was the face for his big shift in terms of how the US and Iran actually deal with each other. So under Obama, there had been great pushes at diplomacy, coming to some sort of international understanding in terms of the future of their nuclear program. That is gone under Nikki Haley and under Donald Trump, and she was an enthusiastic supporter of that change in stance. By the way, also, in terms of the UN and the US, what is our relationship with them? How much do we actually participate? So in terms of philosophy, if she's championing human rights, it might seem like she is pro-UN. This is the US recommitting to the UN. But under her tenure, we pulled out of the UN's Human Rights Council and the United Nations Relief and Works Agency. So in terms of the actual sub-organizations inside of the UN that are doing the work to actually make the UN matter for people across the globe, she was responsible with Donald Trump for making sure that we participate in less of that. And that is something that I would get used to, regardless of who it is that ends up replacing her. She had an interesting quote. The last quote of hers that I want to read here is, countries may not like what we do, but they respect what we do. And I think that statement is exactly half right. If you look at the level of respect that populations across the globe have for America, what it represents in the world, its leadership in the world, it has gone down. And you can look at these polls. This has been borne out over almost 2 years now. They have gone down dramatically in every country in the world except two. That being Russia and Israel, and I think you can understand why both of those are exceptions there. At this point, we don't know yet who's going to replace her. There have been joking comments that it could be Ivanka or it could be Kanye, but it's 2018, so those are both jokes and also kind of credible guesses at this point. Perhaps in 2 or 3 weeks, we'll actually know. Thank you very much for watching this clip from The Damage Report. If you liked it, don't forget to subscribe to this channel and ring the bell on YouTube to get notifications of our new videos. And of course, you can catch the full Damage Report live every weekday at 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific on TYT Network on YouTube TV.